should let me love you forever, forever. I wanna love you. Will you let me love you forever, forever and a day, 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 day.
I love you. Yes! I've been waiting all week for this too. Woohoo! It's tell-all time.
Y'all remind me to never talk to April before we go live. Outrageous. Outrageous. Hi, guys. Welcome to the Melanated Way. I'm Linda Antwi. Over there is April Holloway from Holloway Legal. We are finally at the tell-all, and we're kind of caught up now. Like, there's no part 2 out yet. So 90 Day, The Last Resort, tell-all part 1. I've been saying this, and I'm going to continue to say it. This was perfection. This was all the entertainment I needed. It wasn't too long. They didn't drag out anything. All the edits were good. It was very entertaining, you guys. Very, very entertaining. What were your overall thoughts?
Yeah,
April?
this was good TV. This was good TV. As annoyed as I felt with Rob, I was like, this is good. This is their job. They're doing their job.
So I was annoyed with Rob, but he's not wrong about some things. He's not
wrong about some things. However, sometimes the person delivering the message is not the one I want to hear from.
I mean, Gino also needs to be able to fight his own battles, right? And that was my whole issue with Gino this whole time. No one, I don't know if he's the oldest in the group and no one feel, that whole like respect your elders situation. I don't know if it's that, but he doesn't get confronted on anything and he doesn't have to stand up for himself on anything. And it's like, I don't understand. Like, why are we not confronting Gino and have Gino speak for himself?
I know Rob and Josh are friends now, so obviously Rob doesn't have any kind of backbone when it comes to having been insulted, right? Was that not an insult on him that Josh was trying to talk to Sophie?
I mean, let's talk about it. Hey, Raydella.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Renee. Okay, so starts off with Julia and Brandon. They arrive together, hand in hand, lovey-dovey. I'm not truly convinced that their issues are going to break them up, really. I think that they are issues that they haven't dealt with, but I don't think it's going to break them up. They arrive in matching fuzzies, hand in hand. And one of the things that just like my whole body, you guys, like just like, my whole body just sat a little stiller and straighter because you guys, where is chivalry? It is 2025. This girl opened the door for her husband and said, "After you, princess." And he said, "Yep."
I thought it was a joke. Was it not a joke?
Even if it was a joke, it wasn't funny because he's also a mama's boy who literally, even when we see in this tell-all part 1 that his mom is apologizing for him, like, y'all, be a man. Step up, and where is the chivalry? Stop being a big grown baby. I was like, okay, I'm all in. Because you already got my attention. I'm all in. Josh and Rob have arrived together, and now they're bros, and they're part of the 90 Day Bad Boy situation, which they're really capitalizing off of. They go viral all the time with their little dance routines. Rob says, things are complicated with Sophie, and we find out a little bit later in the episode why it's complicated. I don't know where and when Josh became the voice of reason, but I do still think that he's a huge gaslighter, and anyone that takes advice from him, you guys are wild for that. Florian and Stacy, they're the only couple I honestly believe are going to go the distance. They're 10 years in. And he knows his wife. He's a gentleman. She pops out. He grabs the suitcases. She wants help with her outfit. He helps her. Like, he knows his wife. And even in the episode, we hear him say to everyone, "Happy wife, happy life." And I think that he lives by that motto, April.
To the best of his ability. You know, there's some things that he won't bend on, but most of them he will. So good for Florian and Stacy.
Yeah. So Stacy says that the past few months haven't been great. She feels like they're kind of reverting back to their old ways, and we'll talk about that. So they're all hanging out backstage. Not everyone has arrived. There's a big group hug before Ari and Benny and Jasmine get there. Hey, Christina. Hey, girl. Hey. Natalie comes out and she says that she went through a lot and she expects an apology from Josh, which, I don't think she's going to get. And she has a lot to tell. And I was like, what does she have to tell? Because what I found out on this episode later on that we'll talk about was, oh, so everything that he did to you, and women, I don't know why we do that, but null and void.
I don't know. I can't explain it. And it's not even like she's still in the delusion that there's some sort of relationship possible, because she very clearly says he never cared about me. At least Rob did care about Sophie. So I don't know what is going on, Natalie. Are you that hard? Like, Dick is abundant and free. Oh, it's YouTube. I don't know if you can say that.
Eggplants.
Eggplants are abundant and free. You don't need Josh's.
Facts. And like, why would you give him that satisfaction? Do you remember the last episode where he was like, I need to release you?
Exactly.
And chase you to make sure you were okay, because he wanted to make sure that, he could continue to stroke his ego. I don't understand why we do this, women.
Why allow him that satisfaction? Exactly.
Know your worth.
Do not reward bad behavior.
Know your worth. Sophie arrives. She arrives alone. And y'all, this took me out. Everyone is coming in with their suitcases. You see like LV bags. You see all the things. Everyone's, even Benny, coming in style. Sophie, I was like, Sophie, are you, what's happening? Are you unhoused? She came in, you guys, you saw her bag, right? A ripped Forever 21 bag, which I thought was foreshadowing, because if you guys know, Forever 21 is going bankrupt. So the fact that she came with a broken Forever 21 bag, and then she put the bag down and it ripped, and all of her stuff was just all over the floor. And if you remember at the hotel, even when she had a suitcase, all of her stuff was all over the floor. So I was like, is that how you live your life? Like,
I think it is. I think she's a messy person. She's also the only one of them who actually, I don't know about Josh, but she grew up pretty wealthy. So she probably just doesn't care about that stuff anymore.
Y'all, I'm not showing up with a ripped paper bag. I'm just not doing it. And I think I asked this question before, but I feel like it's worth asking again. April, when you travel and you're in a hotel room, do you unpack and hang your stuff up and put your stuff in the drawers, or do you just leave it in the suitcase?
I usually unpack. I mean, unless it's just one night.
Mm-hmm. Live chat, or if you're watching the replay, when you travel, do you unpack and hang up your clothes and put your clothes in the drawers, or do you just leave it in the suitcase? That is my question of the day. So Benny arrives and he has this Ethiopian wrap on. He's got the black suit with sparkles on. He's got a lot going on. And he came in like he was ready to entertain. Like he was like, he came solo. And then Gino, it was interesting to me because April, they didn't show Gino's arrival. He was just there.
They didn't. We don't know did he arrive by himself? Did they have to do something extra to get him there? Because he was depressed immediately upon arrival, or when we saw him. We don't know when he arrived, but
I was like,
did they have to coax him?
Right. Like, did he spend the night there? Like, where did you pop up from? Michelle says she unpacks. Renee says I'll hang clothes on hangers, never in drawers. And Tanya says both, classic overpacker, even bring my own hangers. Girl, I am not mad at you. So Gino talks about how him and Jasmine recommitted at the ceremony, and he thought things were going to be great, but they went back home and things changed pretty quickly. And then he sat there. Well, he stood there and said, quote, "If Matt shows up, I'm going to make Matt cry." And
Sure.
I
Sure,
laughed.
Gino. Sure.
I laughed. I said, "How are you going to make him cry exactly? Like, what would you say? You're not a word wizard.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say? I've not even seen you stand up for yourself. So, like, what are we even talking about here?"
Perhaps he could make Matt cry from laughter.
That part. That part. So then we see Rob, Sophie, Julia, and Brandon hanging around backstage, all being really nice to each other. Sophie's being super sweet to Rob, and Rob is getting confused by it. But then later in the episode, we're going to find out why he would feel confused, right? Because you can be cordial with your ex, and that's not a problem. But if you're all going to be messy and stay messy, then that's why you have confused feelings.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I like to do, as you guys know, is talk about relationships and give you a little bit of relationship advice. I'm definitely not an expert, never said I was an expert, but I know some things. And I want to say this to you women, and please definitely give me your feedback. But when you cut ties with someone, do you cut ties, or do you, because they're familiar, you continue to like mess with them, even if your relationship was toxic? Because you can't make room for new if you're still with old. What are your thoughts on that, April?
No, you're perfectly right. You're absolutely right. In my life, I have not always followed this advice. You know how most people, even after like you separate from your husband and you're going to get divorced, you still kind of will have some kind of sexual relationship for some period of time. I didn't do that with my ex-husband. However, I had one ex that it was like 3 years that we kept going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. And it was really hard to cut that one off. So, it's hard. It's hard. I try to think about what my friends think now. Like, if I was my own friend, what would I say to myself?
Yeah.
Because we're harder. We hold higher standards for our friends. We want better for our friends sometimes than we want for ourselves.
That's true. I am a cutter offer. Like, it's over. Okay, we're over. Don't text me. Don't call me. I've actually probably blocked you and deleted you on all the things, and that's it. And I've always been that way, and it's probably a little harsh, but it helps me just move on. So I'm curious, ladies, what you all do, and what the healthy balance is.
It's good to have it that way.
Listen, I will cut you off in a minute.
I think that's the smarter thing to do. And honestly, I think that guys know it too. Because I remember being in this chat one time with guys that were talking about what happens when you're married and you cheat on your spouse. And almost every single one of them concurred, she might stay, but it won't be the same.
Really, really interesting.
Mhm.
Tanya says, I think Rob and Sophie enjoy the fight to make up. They love and fight like the devil. This is probably learned behavior. I mean, I think also immaturity has a lot to do with it as well. I think they're both very immature for their ages. So they're all coming to set now. They did the tell-all a little bit differently, you guys. They put the ladies on one side and the men on one side because they said that they noticed at this last resort that that's how they would break up. They would break up in gender.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're going to try something new. Sean arrives, and Sean is Sean. Do you notice that Sean is exactly the same on every single tell-all?
Mm-hmm. Well, we'll come back to you in a moment.
Yes. And also just very hosty.
Yeah, she's very even keel.
Very even keel. Which I Yeah, I'll leave it alone. So the only person they're missing is Jasmine. Jasmine's running late. Producers decide that they're going to start without her because she's still en route. And so they start with Natalie. They do quick recap. So we're going to do a quick recap. Nash and Jodley. Natalie and Josh, we knew from the last resort that their relationship dissolved, Sean's words. And she asked, have you seen each other since the last resorts? Natalie tries to act like she's all like baddie. And it's like, no, we are not friends and we are not talking. And I don't see a point of talking. And okay, we find out a little bit later that so you're not talking, but you're doing other things, Natalie? Okay. Renee says, I think it also depends on the nature of the breakup. She thinks that in the beginning, it has to be a clean break. After healing, you can be friends from a distance.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think also proximity. Sometimes, like if you're still living together or you still live really close to each other, it's just hard. Or if that person has been so very much intertwined in your daily life, it's just a little harder.
It is harder. It is harder. Cut it off, ladies, though. Gino and Jasmine. So Gino's there by himself. Jasmine's running late. He's like, oh, Sean, I'm so sorry. I normally have good news, but no good news today because we separated. And Sean's like, I'm not surprised. You guys had a turbulent journey. And y'all, are any of you guys surprised? Because it was fight after fight after fight, but they just kept moving forward in their relationship. And I have a lot of opinions about their relationship specifically, but April, I want to hear from you first.
I don't think that anything ever happened to resolve the major issue, right? So she came to the resort. They came to the resort with one major issue. She's lacking intimacy from Gino. And she wasn't just talking about the actual physical act. She was talking about hugging, kissing, like any kind of intimacy. And they left with the same problem and having no real constructive conversations about how to resolve it. They only had conversations about how she could either satisfy herself or have somebody else satisfy her. So it was never going to be successful, even if she never developed feelings for, Matt. I forgot his name for a second. Even if she never developed feelings for Matt, even if she never got pregnant, it was not going to work out between the two of them without that issue being resolved.
And the thing is, just to piggyback on what April's saying, they had this issue from the very beginning. Before even they got married, intimacy was an issue. Communication was an issue. They were constantly fighting and not agreeing about what intimacy looked like for them. And, I always tell you guys, you got to have those conversations before you move into a committed relationship. But that's the part that's confusing to me because they continue to move forward, even though they didn't resolve their issues. And it's like, yeah, you can say you care about someone and you love them, but how are you going to have a successful long-term relationship if you can't discuss your major issues? Everywhere you go, there you are. Everywhere your issues are, there they are. So keep moving forward. But at some point, as we see with this, it will implode in your face. Stacy and Florian, they ended the resort on a good note. She said things were good for a while, but they're going back to their old ways. And I loved this analogy. He said relationships are like currency. True. Currency, the cost of currency is different every day. You don't know what it is until you check it. That's them. And it's very accurate for their specific relationship. Julie and Brandon, they felt that therapy was a success. And my face did look like that because it was confusing. Because I felt like, what therapy did you guys have that was successful? And what tools did you take away from the therapist that helped enhance your relationship? Because all I saw was both of you having requests and Julia giving into your request because she didn't want to lose her marriage. So what? And then guess what? You go home and now you're complaining that she's making her thing, which is getting her parents to America on a visa, is her priority versus having a kid. And you guys, this tell-all was filmed almost a year after they filmed The Last Resort. She hasn't yet gone to get a second opinion. That means something. Ari and Benny. I was confused by this. So, because Ari still lives in Vegas, Benny's in Vegas. They're co-parenting, but they're not going to get divorced. And then he talked about like not believing in the paperwork. Are you what?
I have no idea what he means when he says that he doesn't believe in getting the paperwork done, then they could just leave it like this. I do not know what that means. Does that mean that they are now in a lavender marriage where they're basically like roommates to each other and they are going to have the financial benefit of marriage without the actual spiritual churchy aspect of marriage? Like, what does that mean? If that's what they're doing, I understand it because there are financial incentives to being married versus being single. But he just said he didn't believe in the paperwork. I don't get that.
Yeah, and then he also said, but he also wants to move on with his life. So
yeah,
like,
how do you move on while you're still married? I guess that doesn't matter to a person who's cheating, though.
Fair. I was thinking more on your terms, April, that perhaps like he doesn't have like, well, he has to have his green card. He's still here, but maybe he wants, I don't know what it could be because now I just answered my own question.
Yeah, because Benny would have arrived with a green card because
Yeah.
remember, they got married. Wait, hey, am I remembering correctly? They got married in Ethiopia, right?
No, they got married in America.
Okay. So it does seem like he's been here long enough.
Right. That's what I was,
That he
that's why,
probably would.
right. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure why he wants
But
to stay married.
yeah, but he also could have said that. He could have said, we're waiting on my paperwork to get finished being processed. And then we'll separate. Or it's just not a priority right now. But he said he didn't believe in it. That's different.
Yeah, it's weird.
You don't need to believe in divorce for the divorce to believe in you. What? What?
Tanya's asking, do you know if it was filmed before or after his Super Bowl appearance? I'm going to say since Super Bowl was filmed in the first week of February, I think it was filmed before because that was just much more recent, but I don't know that for sure 100%, Tanya. And Renee said, I wonder how Benny's new girlfriend feels about him not getting divorced. She better ask those questions, Renee. She better ask immediately because she will be the side person. And also, you guys, it really is true. How you meet them is how they're going to leave you. How you meet them is how it's going to end. Just know that. He believed in the paperwork when they married and they did his visa application. That is hilarious.
Right.
Sophie and Rob, yes, they've seen each other since the Last Resort, being on The Last Resort. They went apparently months with no contact. And then all of a sudden they started being intimate again. And Sophie says, quote, out of nowhere. Well, it's not out of nowhere, Sophie. One of you reached out to the other one. And since you guys were hanging out with Josh and Natalie, it was like a 4 people toxic relationship. You and Rob, Josh and Natalie probably going hanging out. You're at the bar having a couple of drinks, and now everyone's going back with their toxic significant others. And this is happening because you're comfortable and you're allowing it to happen.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to say something I've never said before without having evidence of some kind. I think Sophie might be motivated by the green card, which sounds weird because she's coming from England, but she's made multiple comments about not knowing whether she wants to stay with Rob or not because she doesn't know where she wants to live or what she would do if she's not with Rob. And so I'm wondering, because you can go to your interview and say, we're not together right now. We're just having a fight. We're trying to work things out. And they'll either go ahead and grant your application because it's fine, married couples fight, or they'll reschedule you to come to another interview. So I'm just wondering, like, is this what's motivating her to continue to go back to him when we later on found out that he's apparently horrible? Or is she stuck in a cycle of abuse?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, those are all valid questions. I don't know. I do think it's interesting that, you know, she admitted that she got breast augmentation. And then for some reason she felt like she needed to show Rob backstage. And y'all are messy. That's it. Y'all are messy. Like that's a messy situation. Either you want to not be with him, you want to be with him, he wants to be with you, he doesn't want to be with you. I don't even know. But like Tanya said in the live chat, that like toxic back and forth, I think they play on it, and that's what they know, and that's what they get off on.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. But maybe we'll find out in the next episode.
Right. So meanwhile, we're talking about Sophie and Rob. Josh jumps in and says, oh, by the way, it's not only Sophie and Rob that have been intimate. I've been intimate plenty of times with Natalie.
He couldn't wait to say that.
Couldn't wait. Wasn't even his turn.
Wasn't even his
wait.
turn. He was like, let me just go ahead and steal the stage for a moment. Nobody was thinking about him.
At all. And then so Natalie tried to like explain it, saying that it was pity, intimacy, yada, yada, yada. No. I mean, I'm losing a little bit of respect for you, Natalie, and here's why. You were like, you know, he doesn't like you. He doesn't love you. He didn't want to be with you. He has gaslight you from the very beginning. He was basically using you for fame and for your body, and you're continuing to allow him to do that. So what has he lost in this situation? He's still on TV, and he still has access to you. I don't get it.
We don't get it, Natalie. Come tell us what's going on.
Facts. So Jasmine, before she comes out, she does her little one-on-one. She says, you know, she's been trying to be cordial with Gino, but it's not working out. And I do believe that part of the reason, I think Christina said it in the live chat too, the way they had Jasmine be late, it was for the theatrics. Because y'all, when she came out, first of all, she commands a room. She came out. She was like, hey, everybody. She comes out fully pregnant. Gino's face drops and he's got like this mean mugging going on. Natalie's shocked. She's like, oh, Rob shocked. Julie, everyone's shocked. Gino says his heart is broken. And then it's all out, y'all. It's about to like just be a brawl. Rob had a lot of opinions. Rob is basically, I'm not surprised by this. You forced Matt on Gino because you wanted to be with him, and you did it in the guise of an open relationship, but you also put the caveat that it had to be Matt. It had to be Matt. It couldn't be anyone else. And April talked to us a little bit about what a true open relationship is, and you can't start from a deficit. Adding a third party into your relationship where you're lacking is not, this is the outcome, which is why, April, I said I agree with Rob in the sense that Jasmine was already having an emotional affair, if not even a physical affair, because y'all, she's about to pop.
Yeah. Where I agree with Rob is that there was clearly some emotional entanglement because she was having conversations about her marriage with Matt. That was not proper for her to do. Where I disagree with Rob is that this was some grand scheme that she forced Gino to be in. Gino's grown. He could have said no. Gino is grown. He could have resolved his own issues. And where I also disagreed with Rob was calling her a whore. Because, sir, what are you?
We'll get to that. So it's super awkward between Jasmine and Gina. She doesn't even really acknowledge him. Sean has to say, hey, like, are you guys going to say hello? And she pauses and finally says hello to him. And then Gina's asked if he's the father of the child. And no, he's not, obviously. Matt is. And Sean asked, is anyone surprised by that? And everyone says they're surprised except for Gina. He's surprised.
Why is Gino surprised by this?
That's it. I was like, but why would Gino be surprised?
Why would you be surprised by this, sir?
Y'all, how many months was it that you guys, like, what?
And he said he was surprised because he wanted to have a kid, and she said no, but that's actually not what she said. What she said was she wanted to get her kids here, and he had forgotten to put him on the paperwork and then refused to hire an attorney to do it. So she didn't completely say no. She said she was concerned. She wanted her kids here, and she was concerned because I think one of her children has autism or something that requires some special attention. That's what I remember her saying. I don't remember her flat out saying no.
I don't remember any of that, but I do know how babies are made. And so you said you wanted to have a kid, but you want to put zero effort into it at all.
Exactly.
For, almost a year. So what are you surprised about?
Where's the kid supposed to come from? Pixie dust?
Right. And then to top it all off, y'all, I was about to say something wild. And God hit me in the back of my head. So let me rephrase what I was about to say. So you wanted to have a baby, but you're putting no effort into having a baby. And then now you're surprised that she had a baby, even though because you didn't want to confront your personal issues, you allowed her, because you said yes to the open marriage, and you said yes to her very specifically saying it had to be one person. And I don't think that that's how open marriages work, but what do I know? You said yes to that. So given the fact that you ignored your issues, you ignored the issues and did not deal with them at all in your marriage. And then you're like, hey, I think it's a great idea for you to add this younger, hotter, fitter, smarter, sexier man to our relationship. Sure, no problem. Just don't fall in love.
That was the dumbest anyway. And nobody's willing to tell him that. Nobody's willing to say, not the therapists that were right there when it was happening, not the guys that he's around. Nobody's willing to say, telling someone you must stop if you develop a stronger emotional connection is insane.
Wild.
That's just not going to happen in any context.
Yeah, wild. So the other thing that I thought was wild was the fact that Sean asked, was this a planned pregnancy? And she said, no. Well, weren't part of the caveats and the rules and regulations that you guys literally had a phone 3 conversation was that you guys were supposed to practice safe sex? So like, again, where did it go awry that you put yourself in a position where you're like, ooh, this is not planned? What?
Well, she didn't tell us how far along she is. So one possibility is that they have been separated long enough that Gino's no longer part of the equation. Another possibility is not just you guys, but like when I'm reading online too, I'm like, people don't really know how much birth control fails.
I just love how you.
No, I'm serious.
No, and yeah.
I know that when you read it, it's like 99% effective or whatever. But that is assuming that everyone uses it the right way. And they don't. We don't have good sex education here in the US. She's not from the US, but we don't have good sex education here. So
I don't think that's what this was. And
maybe she'll tell us because she is pretty open. So,
yeah,
maybe she'll tell us.
I think that, she was deprived for a long time and she was Getting it in. That's what I think. Gino, we just talked about this, but to wrap it up, Gino said that Jasmine didn't want a child with him, so he's really shocked that she's having a child, but we already just discussed where that came from and the backstory to that. Florian and Rob said, you're going to regret it. Sean brings that up. How do you guys feel now that this whole situation has imploded in Gino's face? And Rob's like, it played out exactly as I thought it was going to play out. And Florian's like, yeah. And this is where the name calling came in, right? So he said she's a cheating wife. He called her a pregnant W word. And then everyone decided that that's where we're going to go. We're going to go back and forth with name calling. Jasmine stands up, she starts freaking out. She takes off her shoe and throws it at Rob. Security gets involved. Binyam gets involved. Florian gets involved, and Gino's kind of standing up to act like he's trying to get involved, but he's not doing anything about anything. Then Jasmine throws out a whole lot of stuff about Rob having pictures online, OnlyFans, and peach plugs, and then says that she has video and photos of him selling same-sex porn. And she turns to Sean and says, it's true, Sean, I can show you the videos. I laughed because I was like, ooh, that was a missed opportunity to just if we're gonna go buck wild here, let's just go. Don't show the videos obviously on TV, but show them to Sean, and I want to see Sean's reaction, and so that she can verify as a neutral party whether this is true or not. Because
Sean would never.
I know. That's why I just think this whole thing is crazy. What we start to see is the girls are supporting the girls are supporting Jasmine, the guys are supporting Gino. The guys call Jasmine a manipulator. Gino calls her the H word, and this is where I had an issue. Okay. And so here's my issue, you guys. I don't like it when men resort to degrading women with foul words because their fragile egos are hurt and they have nothing else to throw back. So Jasmine, although she should not have been physically aggressive, which I thought she was, and I thought that was wrong. And I don't also think that she should have, quote, tried to out Rob in any way. But what she wasn't doing was like name calling. And I get so sick of hearing men who are fighting say, oh, she's a, oh, she, not only is she crazy, but she's a, Y'all, most of y'all belong to the streets. Most of you guys are out there running amok as it is, especially if you're single. You're out there with Betty, Michelle, Cynthia, all the people on a regular basis, but no one calls you the things that you're calling women. And then there's also the respect part, right? And so I'm also going to throw Brandon into the mix that we have, like, we're going to end with them. But Brandon, first of all, you're like a mama's boy. You're a big baby. You clearly are not grown, but for you to act like you respect your wife and then all of a sudden you're throwing in these same words to your wife and then you can't even apologize was disgusting to me. So just, you guys, just stop doing it. Just stop doing it. If you don't have a comeback that makes sense for you, then just don't do it. Because when you're coming back with trash, what makes you look like more trash, and no one's respecting that. And then you want the woman to come back to you after you called her a bunch of these names. Stop playing.
There's also this ingrained idea when you use words like that a woman's value is equivalent to how many men want her and how many men she denies. And that is the value of a woman. And I would implore you to start seeing women as whole people and not using virginity and promiscuity as a measure of that woman's value. Christina, come to the front.
Do you want to go ahead and answer this question? So
Yeah, if that baby is delivered while they are still legally married, then Gino is the putative father.
So what was the question for people who are maybe just hearing us?
So
The question.
The question is, because they are married, Jasmine and Gino are married, is Gino on the hook for the baby? And the answer is, if they are still legally married at the time that that baby is born, then Gino is the putative father. He's the father that gets listed on the birth certificate.
Sounds messy.
Also, Christina's seen the pictures and she's confirming that they are real.
Well, and that goes into what I was just about to say. So they get back on stage and they start fighting again. And Jasmine gets up and throws another shoe at Rob. Rob catches it this time and he tries to break it. And then he like goes around and wants to burn it. And then he says he's thrown it on the roof of the studio. So Jasmine's sitting there, you know, barefoot on one with the sparkly shoe on the other, which I just thought was hilarious. What I also thought was interesting is Rob doesn't deny Jasmine's accusations. He doesn't deny it, not one time. Not one time. Instead, he just says he doesn't care. He doesn't care. So you guys decide what you believe or what you don't believe, but he doesn't deny it. Sean's had enough of the drama, but the drama is what kept me engaged, you guys. All of the like hoorah rah, the but she brings it back to reality and says there's no more bad language. We can disagree and stay civil, and there are no more throwing stuff. If you throw stuff, you will be removed from this tell-all. And I just want you guys to take a moment and think back to the pandemic days when that tell-all leaked and it was 10 hours and it was like the best 10 hours of drama to watch. Y'all, I wish I kept it because I would play like clips, flashback Fridays. All right, so we start in depth with Julia and Brandon. They said the relationship was getting better, or at least that's what Brandon said. However, when asked, you know, there are two major issues, which was bringing the parents from Russia and having a baby. Where are they with that? Julia says she's going to Serbia to help her parents with the visa. April, do you have any insight on that? Like, why would she have to do that?
Maybe they're not able to get the documents that she needed to her. I was just thinking maybe they're old and so she wanted to go and navigate getting some of the documentation that they need for them. Maybe they're having difficulty with it because they are Russian, and I don't know if the agencies that they need to get documents from will cooperate with giving them, like if they need new birth certificates or passports, stuff like that. I don't know with what's going on over there if they would cooperate with that. So that's what I was thinking that she meant, that she had to go and help them like gather some of those things and maybe get ready for the interview or get everything submitted for the interview to get it scheduled, or she wanted to be there to go with them for the interview. Something along those lines is what I was thinking that she was talking about. I was confused about when she says that Brandon's not supporting her, though. I don't know. Nobody asked her, what exact support are you asking for? Like, what do you want him to do?
Right. Is this a financial support? Do you want him to come with you? I don't know. So then the second thing is getting a second opinion about her infertility. He feels she's putting it off because she still hasn't gone. And Florian jumps in and turns and says, you know, have you ever heard the saying, happy wife, happy life? And Brandon's like, yeah, I've heard of it, but I also need a few things for me to be happy, which I just thought was very selfish. I thought it was very selfish because this has all been about Brandon. Brandon wants to have a baby. Brandon wants to have a baby. Brandon wants a baby, period.
It's like so crazy to me to tell your wife, I need a baby to be happy. You're literally saying, I need you to risk your life for me to be happy. That is literally what you're saying. And that's just a crazy, insane thing to say to your spouse that you're supposed to care about. Because, like, best case scenario, right? Best case scenario, you have a uneventful pregnancy and an uneventful delivery, but your body still changed forever. But worst case scenario is death. So you're literally saying, it is so important to me that I want to have a baby that I want you to take this risk. That's insane to say to somebody.
They also, I know that they had a surface conversation, but they need to talk about, like, Julia, if you don't want to have a baby, say that, and save both of you guys and a future baby that may or may not have been wanted. Save all of that. Have the tough conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
And to top on that, can you imagine being in a marriage and your husband is like, well, you're not enough for me, really. Like, you're not enough. I'm not going to be happy until we have this baby. Y'all shouldn't have gotten married because you clearly are not on the same page. That being said, Ron and Betty joined from a cruise all boozed up and ready to support their son. So they talk about her dancing on the bar and that she had her privates showing, and that's when he called her a whore, and she wanted an apology for that. And then the dad had the audacity to say, well, maybe you owe him an apology. I was like, Ron, be the voice
Back off.
of reason. Like, because what are you even saying? First of all, y'all shouldn't even be in this conversation because the four of you are not married. They don't jump into your marriage and give you guys advice. So back up. Second of all, your son just called her a derogatory name. You need to correct him on that instead of sticking up for him. That's why he's a big baby, is because you guys back up his baby behavior.
Mm-hmm. And you can tell they think it's okay too. They think it's okay what he said. That's why they're
yeah. And then when he gave this background apology, and even Sean was like, and Sean, who is Miss like neutral, I don't care about any of this, I'm just going to host the show. Even she said, that is not an apology. Jasmine's like, you want to start again?
Right, start over.
And what happens? Betty was like,
I'll apologize for him. No, you won't.
As his mother, I apologize for him. You know when you apologize for your child when they're a toddler and they don't have all the words because they haven't grown to that stage yet, then you're like, hey, I apologize for little Brandon because Brandon only knows like 4 words right now. That's when you apologize for your child. You don't apologize for your grown 30-something child. And I said child because he acts like it. He is not acting like a man.
That's accurate. But yeah, Tanya is correct. Julia was a go-go dancer when Brandon met her. So you knew exactly who she was and how she liked to spend her time. But that's the thing. This is so common for men to go after women and they love a particular thing about them. But then as soon as the relationship begins, they want to put you in a cage and like, they don't want you to be that same person that have that same quality that attracted them. It's a very, very, very common thing among men. And I guess she just didn't see it, didn't realize it. Culture got in the way. I don't know.
Or it was the bait and switch, right? Because sometimes, these men, they show up as a one person, and once they get you, they're a whole
separate person. I just saw a thread today in one of my immigrant groups where this lady was like, I need to let USCIS know that I'm going back home. And people were asking her, like, what happened? What happened? And she's like, man, I got here and he is a completely different person. And I don't care to be here anymore. I'm going home. I just need to do it the right way to let them know.
Yep.
They do. Men on vacation are different in general. First of all, men on vacation are different in general. First of all, then secondly, they're just horrible.
Well, I do think that everyone's different on vacation because you're on vacation. When you're on holiday and you're in holiday mode, that's not the same person that shows up every day and has like the regular schedule and the job and the da and the da and the da and the responsibilities. That's not the same person. So it is important to spend time outside of being on holiday in a relationship to see how the person is on a day-to-day basis. And that's not
Right.
just men, that's people in general.
Right. Correct.
One of the questions I did want to ask you, as well as our live chat, as well as the replay, is so one of the things that they talked about is having limits when you're in a relationship. And Betty said that's the problem with Julia, because Julia is like, why are there limits? There are no limits. And Betty said, well, there are limits when you're in a marriage. And so my question to you guys are there marital parameters that couples should stay in, that there's no leeway for people to color outside of those limits? I'll start with you, April, and then I'll go to the live chat.
Okay, so I think, yes, I think that when you begin your relationship, you talk about what is acceptable to you, what's not acceptable to you. And once you have those boundaries set, anytime somebody wants to act outside of those boundaries, then they have to come back to the table to renegotiate the relationship. If you can't find some common ground on that issue, then the relationship is over. And that's okay. That's okay for the relationship to be over, right? So I think as long as you guys talk about what what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and you have an agreement on that, then that's what it is. I don't think it's a one size fits all for everybody. But once we decide that, if you go outside of it, you violated our marriage, right? And I don't think you should ever assume that someone feels and knows exactly what you want. I think everything has to be discussed.
Tanya says he knew who he married. She never hid. She was a party girl. Let her be her. Ron and Betty, did you forget where your son met her? Also, too, don't throw rocks when you live in a glass house. Ron and Betty, I mean, non-traditional relationship, with the golf swing. Hello. No one's
but
talking.
They somehow think that they're can we talk about just for a little bit conservative swingers? I don't get it. Conservative golf swingers.
Yeah, so
I don't get that. Like, how can you be a conservative golf swinger, but you're anti like a take a big easy. Like, I don't get that. But okay. Maybe we don't have to talk about it. I'll just say that.
I don't get it. I don't know. That someone's gonna have to explain to both of us, because where do you draw the line? So she likes to dance and she keeps her clothes on and she's actually a professional dancer. And you have issues because what? Because what about what? They are probably on a golf swingers cruise for sure with that Mai Tai and whatever that else. It looked like a slushy type of martini. Okay. All red-faced. Even Sean said, ooh, Ron, you're sucking those back. Yes, he is. And then they leave us with the teaser that apparently there was another guy besides the guy that she kissed in the beginning of the relationship. There was another guy that she worked with that something may or may not have happened, as well as he asked Brandon, being he asked her, well, you haven't cheated since we got married. And it was the dun dun dun, and it was over.
Right. So, what are the things that you want to be asked in the next tell-all?
Well, I'm not even going to go there, April, because first of all, if I hosted the show, there would be a lot of questions. They never ask the questions that I want to know about. I do think it's interesting that they said they're going to bring the therapist on for part 2, because I would like to know exactly if they're going to ask the therapist if this was real therapy. That would be one of my questions.
Mhm.
For Julia and Brandon, I would ask Julia, do you actually really want to have a baby? And it's okay to say no if you don't. And you're still
Agreed.
young, you're still a full woman, you're still all the things, and it's okay to say no. For Florian and Stacy, I would ask Stacy what exactly it is that you want from Florian in order to be happy in your marriage, because I think it comes and it goes. And if it's a jealousy issue, then because there had been infidelities in the past, then I think it's important for Stacy to also work on herself,
Mhm.
because you decided that you were going to stick with the marriage, and therefore you can't hold on to that past trauma. So that's the work that should have been done in therapy. And then I would switch it and ask the therapist why they didn't ask or address those issues. For Natalie, I would just say, Natalie, move on. Move on with your life and know that you're a whole woman without having a partner. And a man does not define you.
Mhm.
And I would highly recommend that she goes into therapy to help her develop who she is as a person so that she can feel whole as a person. For Sophie, same thing. I would put Sophie and Rob in therapy separately to try to address whatever issues, because I think that Sophie has some trauma that she has not fully talked about. And I think Rob is the same. And even throwing in the pictures and how that came up and how he feels like he needs to represent himself, and not in public, but as a social media or a public figure. I think that those are things. Benny has issues. I think, Benny, you're in your second failed marriage, 2 baby mamas, and you are not taking responsibility for your role in that. And then you go and cheat. So I would
Mhm.
address the
Mhm.
cheating, and I would address the fact that he is not taking responsibility for the fact that if you do not want to be in a monogamous exclusive relationship, then you need to stop doing that. And you need to also stop just having babies left, right, and center, and then expecting everything to be okay.
Right.
Change your
I
behavior.
also want him to know that's really traumatic to keep leaving people behind with children and then cheating on them. Like, I really don't think that some men are aware of how traumatic that situation is to put somebody in and then expect them to still be able to be a good parent. That's like really like consider the situation, the shambles that you're leaving behind when you do that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. On that note, we're going to be back for part 2. We're also going to be back later this week for the next episode of the original 90 Day Fiance. And I know I asked 2 questions, but I wanted to do 2 things before I wrap this up.
Okay.
One of the things that Rob has been in trouble for online is the fact that and we can discuss it in the next episode, but I do want to read what he said. He mocked Jasmine's accent. And so the internet came for him, and he sent me and also posted in his stories an apology, and I will read it to you. So, and you guys, if you want to see it, you can head over to 90 Day The Melanated Way on Instagram. I posted it there. That's where he sent it to me. He said, I promise I love Latino peoples like I FK with y'all heavy and always have. My bad for being disrespectful, mocking the accent. It wasn't her accent that triggered me. It was her smug response that I was imitating, and her accent just came with it. I'm genuinely sorry to anyone I offended, and I don't need people to tell me it was funny or not to apologize. I genuinely don't want y'all to feel I would disrespect the cultures intentionally because I love y'all. It's probably because I spend so much time around Latinas that I pulled off the accent at all. I know a lot is going on, and I'm in the hot seat for plenty of things right now. But on this thing, I have no ego. I acknowledge it wasn't cool. On a side note, he says he's not gay. Stop asking me because my block hand stronger than when I was 13 at this point.
So that's not a real apology. Number one, an apology has to be directed at the person who you offended. This is like just making a statement, right? And then an apology is supposed to include what you're going to do to change the behavior, like what kind of redress you're going to make to the aggrieved party, and how you're going to change yourself. So none of that was an apology, which is fine. Like you could just make a statement.
I will circle back. I'll circle back on that for sure. I was going to do something else, but I'm going to save it for our next.
Okay.
And are we heading over to TikTok?
Do you guys want to? Well, do you want to?
Let's do it.
Let's do a little TikToking, guys.
Do a little TikToking. You guys don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yes,
I
please.
only see a couple of likes, and I know there are a lot of people on this live. So before you sign out, go ahead and hit that like button. We would appreciate it, and subscribe.
That's how we know that you care. That's how we know that you're here.
That's it. Okay. All right. I'm going to let this go. Good night, ladies. We'll see you over on TikTok if you come over. Bye.
Good night.